Okay, everybody, welcome to the Pandemic Baseball Book Club. My name is Andrew Maraniss, and I'm the author of Singled Out, which is a biography of Glenn Burke, the former Dodger and Oakland A's player who was considered the first openly gay Major League Baseball player and the inventor of the high five. And I'm here today with Walter Beede, who is someone that I'm really just sort of meeting for the first time now on Zoom, but have been following on Twitter and corresponding with on Twitter and email for some time now. Walter is a former college baseball star himself and a Major League draft pick. He's a father of two outstanding baseball players who both played college ball, and his son Tyler was a pitcher here at Vanderbilt, where I'm an alum and where I work in the athletic department now, is now pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Walter is an author of, I think, 5 books. Is that right, Walter, now?
I think we're up to almost 8, but we're
up to 8. Wow.
Slowly increasing. Yes, indeed.
Man, okay, I'm behind. But it's great to have you with us, Walter. Thank you so much.
Andrew, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I think of you a lot because I'm the dad of a young ball player myself. My son, Charlie, is 9 years old. And so the first book of yours that I read was Fun Over Fear, Myth and Realities of Youth Baseball for ages 3 through 9. And I know you've written other books, for parents of youth players, up into high school age and beyond, trying to get recruited to play college ball. So you really run the whole gamut of offering just terrific advice for players and parents of young baseball players. And I was curious, why did you decide to sort of offer your expertise in this way, through writing books?
Well, to be honest with you, Andrew, it started over during the pandemic, and parents were just calling me, asking me, well, there's no travel ball this year, and I don't know, we're kind of stuck. We don't know what to do and what kind of drills to do. And I was kind of, it boggled my mind to think that it wouldn't just say, go out in the backyard and play catch, or go out in the backyard with a wiffle ball, or, play a pickup game in the backyard, So it kind of left me wondering, are most parents kind of frozen by the fact that if there's nothing organized, what do we do to help our children kind of gain a love and an enjoyment from the sport? And more importantly, how to become better when you're little. I think a lot of parents are afraid that they're not knowledgeable enough in order to help their child, play catch, or, whether it's softball or baseball. So that's what kind of got me started and initiated the books. And so I decided to do it kind of like in a trilogy where you go from 3 to 9, where you're just introducing the sport to a child and trying to capture that, that love and enjoyment and that passion. And then leading into the little league ages of 10 through what I call 16, where the physical maturation begins to take place, the desire to play baseball in a more competitive environment, and then ultimately the high school years leading into college. So that helps parents kind of navigate each particular kind of age breakdown of the sport of baseball.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned that, it was shocking that parents wouldn't just have the idea, I'm going to go play catch with my kid in the backyard. And I think about the generational differences. My dad talks about when he was a kid playing baseball, there were no parents around. The kids would just ride their bike to the park. They're essentially coaching their own teams. Right. Now, when I take my son to practice, there's often as many parents at the practices, at the games. He's 9 years old. There's parents sitting in the dugout during practice. It's completely parent driven, and also a business of it, and, not just a neighborhood activity. What was it like for you as a young baseball player? What sort of environment did you grow up in?
Oh, very, very similar to your dad's. Mine was literally, I did not have a member of my family that possessed an athletic bone. And I simply grew up in a neighborhood very similar to the movie The Sandlot. We had our Benny the Jet. We had the guys that were really good. They were older. And so I learned right away that if I was going to be, kind of a part of the neighborhood, athletics was a big deal. And so you played a lot of pickup games. as it pertains specifically to baseball, I was definitively the worst player amongst all of the neighbors. I had a tough time. I didn't play organized baseball or little league until I was 11. I started playing when I was 10. But, you learned in the backyard, and you learned pretty quickly, this guy throws pretty hard. I got to learn how to catch this. And then subsequently, with regard to hitting, we had old wooden bats. We didn't have these new hyper energized aluminum, $400, missile launchers. We had the old Collier Skemsky model, Louisville Slugger, Mickey Mantle, all those kind of guys, Carlton Fisk.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of pickup games where we used to draw on the back of our white Hanes t-shirt, Fisk number 27, and you'd go and you'd play other neighborhoods, and we'd ride our bike about 1.5 miles every day during the summer. We'd play literally from right after breakfast, right up and through dinner, and then we'd play pickup games. We had the rundown game, we had the bunting game. So we just played a lot of pickup games. It's not like that anymore. I call it what we did back in the day, organic, and in today's world, it's over organized. So organized versus organic. And if we let the game get back to organic, kids would pick it up a lot quicker.
Do you think there's any realistic chance that we could go back in the direction? Are you seeing any movement toward it? Someone like me, my son is being asked to play on some travel ball teams. He's 9 years old. I'm trying to resist that as long as I can. On the other hand, I have a little bit of a FOMO, a fear of missing out, when you see everybody else doing it. What's your advice to a parent of a 7, 8, 9-year-old baseball player?
Well, the beautiful thing is that the business of baseball, the business model, has nothing to do with the developmental model of the sport. And so parents such as yourself, they look around the landscape, and Jimmy over here is going, and your classmates playing over there. Inevitably, there's the big bad, like the Warriors, I call it, the best team. And they, the bottom line is, it's purely business. It has nothing to do with baseball development. And organic, for instance, Tyler and Kyle, and I'm going to say that I believe they both ended up being pretty gosh darn good baseball players. They never played travel baseball until the age of 14. And really it was 15, but 14 is when Tyler started. And the thing is that he would always be around older players. And that's the secret, because now the business model of youth baseball only allows 7, 8, 9. It's in the step of the age and the grade.
Right.
And the best way for people to learn in all dynamics and facets of life is watching older peers perform at highly athletic movement patterns and fluid. And you say, okay, I want to be that. I want to do that. And so your emulation is kind of the first foray into learning your sports, because you see, I see how he's fielding the ground ball. I see how he's catching, but we've taken that away. So no longer are we learning in that 10 to 12-year-old grouping or that 13 to 15-year-old grouping. We're learning against other boys our age, and it's not quite as advanced as what I call the former little league days of 10 to 12 years old. The simplest thing I tell parents is, if you put your son in an environment with some older boys, now I'm not talking about a 10-year-old with a 15 or 16, I'm talking like an 11 or a 12-year-old, and you just let them play catch and you just walk away. The more that occurs, the better that child is going to be at catching and throwing. And that's the single most important skill set for a baseball player. We want to talk about pitching. We want to talk about hitting. If you were to go talk to Tim Corbin right now and you say, what's the definition of an elite baseball team at the college level? First answer he would tell you is they catch and throw it the better than we do. Meaning they can catch, tag, throw, accurate, hard, and they do that through repetition. And we just don't get enough of that. It's game tournament heavy and practice light, the business model of youth baseball today.
And I know that even going back a little bit into the earlier age of kids, one thing I was struck by in your book was the fun aspect. Like this should be fun for kids. That's what kids enjoy, is fun. And that if baseball is not fun, at some point when it gets hard as they get older, they're gonna give it up if they haven't developed that love for it because they enjoy doing it. So how do you recommend that just introducing or reintroducing the fun back into baseball?
Well, the biggest thing that I did with the boys when they were little, now I'm starting like with 3 or 4 years old, is I went and got balloons that were like baseballs, and I let them just run around catching those balloons. Like I'd throw them up in the air, and you don't have to tell a child to catch a balloon because, one, there's no fear. Two, both hands will go up. They won't try to do it with one hand. So if you think about how simple and fun that is, and you just throw them all the time, you throw them up in the air, they catch it, and then they want to give it back to you, repeat that. The other big thing that I did when they were that, young, those younger ages, the big red wiffle ball bat, or a big red, the big barrels. And you can use wrapped up socks. You can use what they call an Incrediball, which is a almost like a Nerf baseball. And you let them hit that ball, and every time they hit, they want to throw the bat down, run around like they hit a home run. Yay. So they instinctively develop this, okay, if I hit the ball, everybody's excited and I get to run. All I care about is I get to run. And so I don't care about first base, second base. We try so hard to teach algebra, the equivalent of algebra, to 6 to 8 year olds, when really all they need is addition and subtraction. And we're going to get to the division and the multiplication, but let's start with the big red bat and let's hit balls all over the field. Let's use a tee. A lot of parents will say, oh, my son doesn't need a tee. He's been hitting off a pitch ball. Okay, that's great for your son, but the other kids, it's not. So let's make it uniform. So more contact means more engagement for the kids, whether it's base running or fielding, et cetera. And then with regard to equipment, everybody wants to run to get brand new equipment. The best thing you can do at the young ages is to get pre-owned, broken in gloves. The kids are they're gonna need the ability to open and close their glove. So anything that's a hand-me-down is gonna work better. And all you want to try to get them to do, with the help of either a Nerf baseball or what I call an Incrediball, play catch with them and roll them that ground ball with the Incrediball. It doesn't hurt them. They have no fear. They're not thinking about anything to do about getting hit or hurt. And the next thing you know, you start to see them move with confidence. It's when we try to put 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds in these very intense environments. I don't know if you've ever been, and I lived in Louisiana while Tyler and Kyle were going to college, and I'd see these 6-year-old games. And I had a parent once say to me, this is for advanced 6-year-olds, which I don't know what that means. But anyway, I said, this is kind of like gladiators in ancient times. I said, that's what it must feel like for these kids. They look around, they hear parents yelling at parents, parents yelling at umpires, parents screaming instruction to kids, throw the ball, don't throw it there, get it in, all this stuff. It's very intimidating. And so I think we over-organize it to the tune of $25 billion a year. And the money that is coming from 6-year-old to 14-year-old parents is approximately 80% of that number.
Wow.
The data pretty much states that after the age of 14, most boys stop playing baseball.
Wow. I saw you had a tweet, or maybe yesterday, about a 6-year-old travel league, right? There was having multiple teams maybe in this organization, and just how that was a business model, not a baseball model.
Well, the thing is, if parents stopped and did the math, for that organization to say we're trying to field 3 6-year-old teams. So I always try to get parents to think long term. So inevitably, those 3 teams go all the way through. And 6 through 8 is generally between $1,000 and $2,500 per player, and most teams will carry 15 players. So if you just start to do the math, and I used $1,000 without including lodging and food and gas, et cetera, equipment and apparel, that's $15,000. That's $45,000 that's coming in to a business. And the expenses, the debt service on that is not even 30%. It might be 20%, because umpires work for like $20 to $25 at those ages. So the business of baseball or youth sports in general is really what is causing all of the issues at the higher levels. Because what happens inevitably is a parent isn't happy because their child can't play shortstop or can't pitch or can't catch. What do? They just hop in a car and go play for another team, or they start their own team. And so we have this non-loyal kind of, there's no sense of community, no sense of team. Even high school now is viewed as, very disposable and not really a big deal. And that troubles me a great deal, because that's the community that you grow up in for the most part. And so you should want to, or aspire to, be a part of a high school experience with those student athletes and people in your school that you've grown up with all those years. So yeah, the business of youth baseball is really running at full speed, and it's projected to get even higher, up to $75 billion over the next 4 to 6 years.
Wow. And I mean, is what's driving it parents, hoping for a college scholarship in a sport that isn't even a full scholarship sport, or hoping that their son pitches in the major leagues like your son? I mean, is it what's driving this youth baseball business explosion?
I think a lot of it is vanity from the parents' perspective. I really believe it's a status, social media status. We get right down to it, it's more of a social environment for parents. The red solo cups, the tailgating, the interaction, staying in a hotel, hanging out. So from that perspective, okay, I get it. And I've been involved in that, and it is fun developing friendships. But at the same time, the kids aren't really having a great time. And inevitably, you're driving 3 to 4 hours to play a team that's in your backyard that you could have played.
Right.
But really, the biggest number one issue is that parents are ill-advised at the younger levels. And if I told a parent, the vast majority, if I take 10,000 student athletes, which is typically the number of student athletes that find their way to all levels of college baseball as high school seniors, 10,000. And of that 10,000, the vast majority, well over 70%, are going to go to an NCAA Division III or Division II school. Another significant portion, 15%, will end up in NAIA schools, and approximately 10% of that number will end up at NCAA Division I. And at all schools, there's no such thing as a full athletic scholarship. And the academic money is much more powerful.
Hi, how are you?
Baseball money is more of a performance bonus. It's not a scholarship.
Okay.
And so I'll tell parents, if you look back over the 8 years of travel baseball, you've spent between 40 and as high as 70,000. Your sons are going to have, or they're going to incur, almost $70,000 to $100,000 in student debt, and that's if they get a baseball scholarship. I have a young man that's at Fordham. He got a 60% scholarship, which is extremely high on the end of the spectrum. And when he graduates, he'll have over $130,000 in student debt.
Wow.
And so the travel baseball doesn't equal what parents think or what they're paying for. In other words, making your son take lessons at 9 and 10 is not going to bear any fruit or pay or provide any significant value when your son gets to high school and college. It's just not, because of physical maturation, motor skill development, things like that.
Okay.
So the narrative is really wrong. I had a young man in Mississippi, 7 years old. His dad was told that the selection of the travel team that he was about to make would definitely have an effect on his college baseball recruiting.
That's 7.
7. I mean, that's a fact. And the organization that he referred to probably has over 50 teams. And what I try to tell parents is those people that have come before, we don't know how athletic they were. We don't know how long they played for an organization. I have 5 organizations that all take Tyler and use Tyler as a beacon on their webpage, and he might have played 2 games for them.
Okay.
To be with a friend. So it's just a crazy process.
Wow. You mentioned the high percentage of kids that are out of baseball by age 14. What are the reasons for that? Are kids getting burned out? They're sick of the parents or there are fewer opportunities for them to play?
A lot of it has to do with burnout and the parental interaction, because let me ask you this. If I go play lacrosse as a 13 or 14-year-old and I disappear into the maze of running jerseys all around the field, sticks are flying around, everybody, it looks like soccer, it looks like hockey, but you can't really tell if I'm having a good game or a bad game unless either I'm the goalie and give up a goal or I'm trying to score a goal and I score a goal. But other than that, most parents look at lacrosse as, oh, he's running around, he's having fun. Wow, that's great. And there's no, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. You take baseball, it's a slower moving game, but most importantly, it's a spotlight. So wherever you are in the ball, if you're the pitcher, everybody's watching you. If you're the hitter in the box, everybody's watching you. So that spotlight begins to become so intense that a lot of boys just say, you know what, this isn't for me because I seem to be upsetting my parents or my family. I'm not living up to the expectations that have been placed on me, meaning, I'm not getting recruited. You look on social media, the class of 2027, who I don't even believe is in high school yet, but they're committing to Mississippi State or Florida State, or, and so they get to that age and say, I'm not no colleges are looking at me. This is too much for me. And so I equate it a lot like a computer. If you overstress a computer, you just see that wheel spinning and it just stalls. That's what happens with young student athletes. They just stall and they have no expression and they just say, you know what, I'm going to check out. This isn't for me. And I'm just going to go move on to either something academic or a different sport. And this just isn't for me. I'm not going to make my high school varsity. I'm letting everybody down. So they just choose to go a different direction. So parents need to understand, from the ages of 6 to 12, there are about 3 million student athletes that participate in various baseball leagues across the country. And of that 3 million, by the time they get to high school, varsity, there's less than 100,000 varsity baseball players in any one get. And this is data. This is hard factual data. This isn't just guesstimate. In fact, last year, in 2021, with 67,000 student athletes participating in varsity baseball across the country.
Wow.
And when you start to break down that data, now a lot of that may have had to do, some of that may have had to do with COVID, but generally it's between 67 and 80,000. But of that 67 to 80,000, going to college, total college roster spots across all levels and divisions is approximately 35,000 student athletes. So you look at that massive funnel and you just go from 2.5 to 3 million down to 35,000 that end up playing in college. Statistically speaking, all these parents that are paying all this money, there's no return on that investment. Right. So if your expectations is anything other than like a trip to Disneyland every year, because that's what it essentially is. I equate travel baseball with going to Disney, because Disney, I'm spending $3,000 to $4,000 with the family. We're lodging, we're eating, we're having fun, creating great memories. If that's what you're doing travel baseball for, fantastic. But if the expectations are, my son's going to end up as a big leaguer, my son's going to go to Vanderbilt, it boggles my mind when I hear a parent say, we'd like to go to Vanderbilt. I said, how many people do you think say that? I said, and do you know their acceptance rate is 3%? I said, so let's just start with, is your son academically prepared, first and foremost? And secondly, they play in the SEC. And if you've ever been to an SEC environment, I said, every other school is like 14 to 25,000 students. Vanderbilt's 6. I said, so when you roll into Alabama or LSU or Mississippi or Mississippi State, there's 17 to 20,000 rabid fans that are absolutely abusing your son. I said, is he really ready for that environment? And so you try to get parents to understand the realities are that less than 7% of all boys that start to play baseball as youngsters will end up playing college, not just Division I, college baseball.
Well, now if the goal is to develop a great baseball player or to develop a major leaguer, one of the things you point out is it doesn't have to be this way. And if you look around the world, and sometimes forced because of economic conditions, but percentage wise, there's a lot more, like Caribbean, Latin American ball players in the major leagues than Americans based on the population of their countries. And it's a completely different situation there. And I wondered if you could talk about, how ball players develop in other parts of the world that shows us a different way it could be done.
Well, first of all, I go back to that word organic. Two things about foreign players. One, they're very creative. So if you ever watch the Mariano Rivera interview, he talks about his cardboard gloves. He talks about the bats that they would nail together. So they got very creative, and their amount of what I call organic repetitions. So here's the big difference. Foreign players, they just take repetitions. They don't ask how. If nobody's around, they throw a ball off the wall. If somebody's around, somebody might hit them ground balls or just roll them ground balls. But it's nothing organized. They don't wait for a coach to blow a whistle and say, okay, we're going to do this, and you get 5 to 10 repetitions. No, they take thousands of reps. For every repetition, whether it's a fly ball, a batting practice, a ground ball, they're taking 100 to our 1. And so if you start to they look at it as a form of being an athlete and being elevated in status and stature. So the more they work, the more the opportunities they're going to get to play with the older boys. And so I always tell parents, if we look anywhere with regard to a foreign player, they're playing with boys that are, in some cases, 5 to 6 years older. And we're worried about a 10-year-old being with a 12-year-old. And when did that suddenly become the barrier, the threshold? It was like that for decades. So the foreign players they have more fun. They have more pickup organic games and practices. They also, one of the things is they're very instinctual. Whereas here, everything tends to be more methodical. And so by that, I mean, they are allowed to be aggressive. Why? Because it's children playing against children. Here, everything's over organized. And so a coach says, no, you're not going to steal. Nope, you're not going to bunt. Whereas over there, if they want to put a bunt down, they just do it because they know it can be successful to help their team. They want to steal a base. They want to dive after a ball. So they get aggressive early and confident early, and they're not afraid to fail. One of the things I always try to stress to parents is failing in baseball, it's inevitable, and it happens the majority of the time. Mm-hmm. Swing and miss, an error, a walk with the bases loaded. The more we fail, the more we learn, and the more we learn to get in front of those types of things. So, for instance, you look at a Latin hitter, for instance, they're not afraid to swing and miss. They're aggressive, but they also know how to put a barrel on a baseball on a consistent basis because they trust in their practice schedule. So therefore their instincts begin to take over and they know the situation. I think the other part of it is we as adults try to script or predetermine a path for young athletes. Oh, he's going to be really good. Oh, he's not. He's a AA player or a AAA player. Or, they try to quantify and classify. Whereas over there, you're just playing with all your kids of your same age. The good ones figure out, okay, I'm better than him, and they compete that way. Whereas here, oh, you're not quite as good, so I'm going to put you down 2 levels with all the other boys that aren't that good. That's the wrong way to do it. You have to have good players, great players, good players, and average players all on the same team because that's how they all learn. And that is something over there. For instance, when you watch a Babe Ruth or Little League and you watch Curacao or Venezuela or the Dominican or watch it in the World Baseball Classic, look at the energy in the stands. Look at the engagement. the singing, the clapping, even in Japan. I don't know if you've ever watched a game in Japan, but they're energized. Whereas here, everybody is more of a pastoral kind of, you're living and dying on every pitch and every hit. Oh, he struck out. Oh, okay, there's going to be another at bat. So I just think we grew up in this social media, video game, technology driven world, that the expectations that we place on young children, that motor skills have not kicked in yet, physical maturity hasn't kicked in yet. It will all even out by the time they're 16. But for the little boy that's big at 10 and the little guy at 10, eventually when they get to 18, they're pretty much in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
But I would say organic versus organized. It's way too organized here. It's over organized. It's oversaturated. There's no end in sight. But I will tell you, there's a massive shift that's already started at the major league level, and it's going to have a dramatic effect on the game of baseball at all levels over the next 5 years.
Okay, what is that?
Well, if we look around and we start at the top, Major League Baseball used to be 40 rounds of Major League draft. They eliminated 42 minor league teams, which were the short season teams. They cut the number of rounds in the draft from 40 to 20. They cut the number of players drafted from 1,500 to approximately 650. So that is essentially pushing more high school athletes within the country into the college arena, for lack of a better term. Well, if we look at the changes in the college game, we now have unlimited transfers and unlimited time periods to transfer. That just passed yesterday. We now have NIL money, national likeness and image money that can be given out. We have new insurance policies that schools can offer students. It's a very big business now, where a lot of student athletes are going to stick around longer, which is going to reduce the opportunities for the high school student athlete. So the narrative of a travel organization saying, well, we can help get you into college, that's not going to be the case anymore. What's going to be the case is colleges across the country are going to reduce the number of high school seniors in their any given recruiting class. You're going to see them leave a pocket open for transfer portal or junior college transfers, because the game is getting older. So at some point, travel baseball is going to have to follow suit. And you mark my words, there'll be some form of a league that will develop that will eliminate all the, what I call, subpar programs. And it will just be these elite programs that'll begin competing from the ages of 14 up. I really think Little League will come back and high school baseball will come back because they'll, for children that want to play the sports, there's going to need to be more opportunities amongst more age groups. So those changes probably over the next 4 to 5 years begin to affect the lower levels, like your son.
Okay, wow. One thing I want to ask you about that sometimes I feel could potentially be perceived as contradictory. I want to get your thoughts on it. This idea of, repetitions is what really matters. On the other hand, you'll hear people say, don't specialize too early, like play multiple sports. So can both of those things be true at the same time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Most definitely. Again, I go back to, as a dad, I can just speak for my two sons, football and basketball players. Tyler played a little hockey. The biggest thing is kids need to understand that they can be kids. They can pick something up and put it down based on their emotional attachment. For instance, during basketball season, the kids, all they wanted to do was shoot baskets. Every once in a while, they'd throw a ball off a wall. But when it was baseball season, we were fully engaged. You're not going to miss out on any type of learning curve or learning opportunity by not playing a sport all year round. You can play catch all year round. You can play wiffle ball all year round. But I always tell parents that are working with me, put the bat and ball down. Let them go play football. Let them fish. Let them hike. Let them go, hunting, whatever they do as a child. Let them go do it. They're not missing out, because what's happening at those younger ages is there's a mental and physical maturation that's going to sync up every year with their athletic movement patterns. And so one thing you want to be aware of is a movement screen on younger athletes. When I was a kid, we had the presidential medal of the athletic fitness boards.
Right.
Do that as much. But one of the things that would do is it would give you a year by year barometer. Okay, this is how many push-ups you did. This is how many sit-ups you did. This is your long jump, your broad jump. But you could kind of see yourself getting better. And so I do that. I used to do that with the boys, vertical jump or foot speed race or something, just so that they would be challenging themselves. But it is okay. You are not the people that want you to believe that you need to play longer. It's only after a green piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. There's nothing else. Like, you don't need to take a lesson all year round. You don't need to play fall baseball. And, these guys that do these tournaments in the winter, all you're doing is hurting yourself. Okay, you live in Florida and California and Texas. Okay, I kind of get it. But at the same time, inevitably, there's going to be a burnout. You just don't know when it's going to happen.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about sort of the misplaced expectations and the numbers game, but you actually do have a son who's pitching in the major leagues right now. I saw you got to go on a father-son road trip to Wrigley Field with the Pirates. What is it like to be the dad of a major leaguer? I mean, do you live and die with every pitch he makes, or that the Pirates games? Is it fun? It's just totally stressful. What's it like?
It's totally stressful, and you definitely, I would say it's a lot better than it was, but it could be a lot better. In other words, you obviously want your son to have success, but at the same time, you have to recognize this is his profession. This is his vocation. He's not standing over me when I'm writing a book or anything like that. So I try to put some things in perspective. The most thrilling thing is that Tyler's path to the big leagues was very unique. I'm proud of the way that he handled it. I'm proud of the way that he made decisions that were in his best interest. And for him to be living his dream is extremely gratifying as a parent, because I know how much he wanted that and how much he worked for that. I mean, he gave up a lot of social activity when he was younger. And so now he's able to, reap the rewards of that. So from a parent standpoint, it's great. I will tell you, at Wrigley Field, what caught me off guard is they let us go out on the field during batting practice to kind of shag fly balls. I did not anticipate that, nor did I dress for it. But, you stand there and you kind of so it's one thing to look from the stadium onto the field. It's another to stand on the field and look into the stadium.
Yeah.
And so from that perspective, I can tell you it's extremely intimidating. Because you look up and you see these three levels, you see Wrigley Field, and so these athletes are performing at such a high level in their level of missing, and I try to explain to parents, when you have to throw a 5-ounce baseball at 60 feet and you have to throw it across a 17-inch rectangle, and it's not just a fastball, and it's hard, and you're missing by fraction of an inch. But I will say the Vanderbilt experience was thrilling. Obviously, winning the national championship was just exhilarating. And I was so happy that Tim was able to capture that. I was so happy for Tyler to be a part of that. But being a big leaguer in today's social media driven world, it can be difficult. So as a parent, I catch myself, trying to avoid topics that relate to anything to do with his pitching within the Pirates organization.
Okay, I see. All right. Well, one thing I wanted to be sure to do is help promote your books a little bit more than we've done. We've talked a lot about the content of it, but can you give us a sense of the books that are out there? We've talked about Fun Over Fear, but you also have the process and the recruiting process. Tell us about the other books you have and how they relate to different stages of development and how people can find them, buy them.
Sure. Well, all the books are currently on Amazon. They're about to get into Barnes and Noble and Apple. I wrote Fun Over Fear for the reasons I alluded to earlier, just to get an introduction to the sport, some fun kind of drills and games that you can create for your children. The process was really written for those parents of the little league age through that junior high age, talking about when to start your strength training. Is it important to do travel baseball? Is it important to do showcases? Who needs to do an evaluation and when? I cover all that information. I try to present an alternative for parents than trying to pay for everything. We shouldn't have to pay. Baseball is not a jukebox. We don't have to put money into a jukebox and have somebody sing for us. So as it pertains to baseball. And so I cover a lot of area there where I talk about those student athletes that begin to have a love and a passion for the sport, and they aspire to take their game to the next level. The biggest single foundational piece that those children need to have is strength. Because what ends up happening is they get to be 16 or 17 and they're trying to play catch up through high school, and they're trying to chase those seniors and juniors. So if you prepare beforehand, you'll get that. But with the recruiting process, every single facet of college baseball recruiting, and I mean every single facet, from NAIA, junior college, and NJCAA, and NCAA divisions 1, 2, and 3, talk about questions that you can have. It's like an interactive workbook, talking about some of the decisions that go into it, the academic component, when to send correspondence to coaches, what type of videos to send, what are the metrics for your children. If, in other words, if they're running a 7.4 60 and you think they're a shortstop, they're probably not going to be a shortstop. So I have all kinds of analytic and metric information, so you can kind of gauge where your son falls within that grading system. And that's pretty much it. And I put all kinds of contacts in there for resources. So if you're looking for a remote strengthening trainer, you have that access, a catching coach, an infield coach, an outfield coach, a pitching coach, Tom House, Eric Cressy. So I put a resource page in there for parents in case they wanted to kind of reach out to some of these guys remotely.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I know in addition to the books, you're sharing a lot of this information every day on Twitter, doing your own interviews there. And so people can learn from you. And you also do consulting for individual families and teams, don't you?
I do that, yes, through baseballprocess.com. I've been doing that for a little over 30 years. So, I probably say on any given week, I talk to about 8 to 10 families from anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes. And it's just, helping them gain some peace of mind to, that they have a good game plan in place and they don't have to chase a lot of rabbits.
All right. Well, Walter, this has been really fun. I just admire your approach so much. Before we go, I mean, how much of a iconoclast are you in the youth baseball world? I mean, your approach seems very different, right? I mean, you're going up against sort of a model that is designed in exactly the ways that you're saying are wrong, right? Are more people sort of adopting your philosophy, or are you still kind of an outlier?
I wouldn't say I'm as much of an outlier as I might have been a couple of years ago, because I call it bearing fruit. A lot of the boys that I worked with pre-COVID are now, juniors in high school and having a lot of success. So, the proof is in the pudding. So I definitely would say I'm swimming upstream, but at least I'm making a little bit more headway. And I'm happy to say that parents now I have all kinds of letters and feedback. I'm so happy that we did this. It worked out great. My son's happy and he's confident in playing high school varsity baseball. So I'm not going to stop. I mean, if this is the hill I got to die on, this is the hill that I'll die on. But, for me, baseball is one thing. I'm very passionate about the sport. It's been a part of my life since I was, a little boy. And I just want to return it to the kids. I mean, we really have to get the parents to understand the kids will figure it out. They will figure it out. All we got to do is get out of their way.
Get out of the way. All right. Well, Walter, this has been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and all the best to you and to your family.